Hello there, folks. In this video, I thought I would salute, woo, the greatest Royal Rumble of all time. Thought try something new out. I am currently watching the Legion of Doom take on the natural disasters from the Royal Rumble 1992. And I thought we'd do a commentary of the 1992 Royal Rumble. You won't be able to see or hear it, obviously. And not just talk about fake fights, but you can talk about life in general and what I've been up to today. I don't like Celtic Football Club. Right, I'm going to get on with it. I'm going to put on the 1992 Royal Rumble. I have the disc in on my PlayStation 2. I need a new DVD player for Christmas. It's going down the tubes, it seems. Right, I'm clicking play now. I suppose you could call this like a watch along. I've seen this numerous times. It's actually a crime watching this on mute because the commentating's so good by Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. We've currently got the Fink in the ring. There might be pauses now and again, moments of silence, as I do have a tea in my Rangers Christmas mug. I'm not even sure if this will work. I tried out something yesterday on my third channel, PMDB free, where I just did a slideshow kind of type of video, a little bit of video footage at the start and at the end, and I uploaded way quicker when it was mostly just pictures. So I've always wanted to do one of these type of videos during a live stream, but live streams, I've gone off of live streams again. I just think they're too much hassle. I've not had any hassle lately, but I've seen others going through hassle, and I'm like, nah, I think I'll just stay away from that. So we've got Jack Tunney in the ring. He's holding the best looking WWF championship that WWE's ever produced. Jack Tunney, I liked Jack Tunney as a authority figure. I watched the 1992 Royal Rumble the first time around when I was just 4 years old, as I sip my tea again. I am really aging myself, depending on who is watching, of course. I ended up watching a video today that came on my recommendations. The thumbnail looked appealing. And I've seen her before. She's a young YouTuber. I didn't realize how young she was. But I felt ancient when she said, I don't know anything about the 90s because I was born 2001, which makes her 18. I thought, oh my goodness, I am so old compared to the likes of her. Out comes number one is the British Bulldog. I actually seen the British Bulldog in 1993 at an event in Aberdeen. So I've actually seen the British Bulldog wrestle in his prime. Out he comes. He is number one participant in the 1992, the greatest Royal Rumble of all time. I wonder who number two could be. I should have, I'm very ill prepared for this video. Out comes Sensational Sherry, and she's leading the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase down the way to the ring, whom was in my top 10 wrestlers of the golden age of wrestling video I did. He was my number 5. I think his interviews were just brilliant. If this goes smoothly, and I feel like people want to see more of me, commentating on fake fights and talking about life in general while I do it. Then I'll do more of these, but maybe this will be a once-off. We shall see. It might not even work. Trying to remain positive. It's been a bit of a negative day. Celtic won the League Cup, sadly. Celtic they had one good player on the pitch. Fraser Foster, fantastic. What a goalkeeper. I was looking at the comments because I was thinking it too. As Ted DiBiase battles the British Bulldog here. And a Celtic fan had written about how Andy Gorham, he never called him Andy Gorham, he had another name for him, I won't say. But it was like, oh, I remember the days when Andy Gorham used to save Rangers against Celtic, which was true. A lot of times, Rangers won those games because of Andy Gorham. And he was like, and then somebody else wrote, as the $1 Million Man, he's got his back turned and he gets a clothesline out. $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, first one eliminated by the British Bulldog in the 1992 Royal Rumble. So, and then another guy commented and was like, yeah, Karma's came around, and I guess it has. Because the story of today was Celtic's goalkeeper saved Celtics behind in this League Cup final match. As we count down to the third participant, it is Ric Flair, whom, spoiler alert, goes on to win this, the greatest Royal Rumble ever. Behind him is Mr. Perfect, whom also featured in my top 10 wrestlers of the golden age of the World Wrestling Federation. Ric Flair did not feature. 2 seconds. Because there was only wrestlers that were working for the World Wrestling Federation at the time, and I decided to do it based on the years 1985 to 1990, as I feel that is where the peak of the golden age came to an end following WrestleMania 6, which I really enjoy. Ric Flair's fantastic in this match. As he squares off against the British Bulldog, very entertaining wrestler. This is like a who's who. Even though the golden age had sort of died down by this time, this was like a transitional year. There's still a number of big time players from the golden age, with the exception of the Olympic Warrior. He's not in this Royal Rumble. I remember watching this Royal Rumble when I was 4 and hadn't realised that the Olympic Warrior had quit, been fired, whatever, at the previous SummerSlam from 1991. And I was disappointed. I was disappointed in the 1992 Royal Rumble because the Olympic Warrior didn't appear. I remember when the Texas Chainsaw, I watched that last night. I remember when the Texas Tornado came out. I was like, is that Jim Hellwig? Is that the Olympic Warrior? It kind of looks like him. But where's the face paint? So yeah, I was at 4 years old. I was actually disappointed with this Royal Rumble, believe it or not, which is the best one. As number 4 comes out, it's a nasty boy, and it sags. I've also everyone that's came out so far, I've got an old action figure of them. That's all I used to do. I actually played with my wrestling figures more than I actually watched shows and created my own shows instead. I feel like I was always meant to be performing and creating. Sags doesn't last long here. Currently, Ric Flair and Sags are double teaming the British Bulldog, Davey Boy Smith. I was never a big fan of the Nasty Boys, to be honest. They're no Demolition, of course. Get Demolition for the Hall of Fame already. There will be no Demolition acts in this Royal Rumble, but Smash appears. Not as Smash, but he appears as Repo Man in this one. I have an action figure of the Repo Man too. And then later on in this Royal Rumble is a very young Shawn Michaels. I believe he was 26 at the time. And I really like Shawn Michaels. Sags is over the top ropes. He's about to get a drop kick, I predict, from the British Bulldog. And out he goes. Bye-bye, Sags. And we're down to Flair and the Bulldog again, number 1 and 3 entries going at it. Well, if you are going to watch this pay-per-view, this Royal Rumble match, don't watch it on mute because, well, Bobby the Brain Heenan's commentating in this is just A-class, as we count down to the 5th entry, whom is Haku, if I remember right. It's Haku. I've watched this a few times. Haku. A number of people say that he is the legit toughest wrestler ever. A lot of wild Haku stories out there. So right now I'm on the road to PMDB 1600. Whether I get to that milestone or not before the year is over remains to be seen. And then following whether I hit that milestone or not by the end of this year, this decade, I am going to take a break from YouTube for a while. I need a break. I'll be totally burnt out by the end of this decade. Nearly 1,600 videos. I think it'd be a good time to take a break, and I do want to continue doing videos in 2020 as the British Bulldog is about to take a very dangerous looking pile driver. Every man for himself in this affair, where the good guys go against the good guys and the bad guys go against everybody. Good old Rick. This was definitely his finest moment, finest performance in the WWF. It was for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. 1992. What was I doing in 1992? I was unemployed. I was only 4 years old, like. I'd have actually been at Fernley Nursery, I think. Yeah, just before primary. As we go on a 10, countdown again, as Haku awkwardly is thrown out by the British Bulldog. Bye-bye, Haku. Who is... Oh, it's Shawn Michaels. Shawn, I feel old because I'm older than Shawn Michaels was then. He was 26, I believe. My hair's longer than his now. Ha! Oh man, he was a good-looking man, Shawn Michaels. Still is pretty handsome. Less hair, but still pretty handsome. But he was definitely good-looking. He's going off against now. The super kick he does there is crap. It looks fake, so fake. And he's going up against the British Bulldog now. He just had a moment with Ric Flair there, and of course, them two faced off at WrestleMania 24, where I did feel like Ric Flair was way past his prime by then, but it was still a terrific match. I'd give it maybe 4 stars out of 5. I think it's slightly overrated. I mean, Ric Flair was way past his prime. And by the time of WrestleMania 24, even, in 2008, when they're still, like at that time, they were still relying on guys like Ric Flair to draw in an audience. Like, I don't like today's wrestling. A lot of people think I do because I talk about it a lot, but I feel like wrestling is a safe subject to talk about because nobody could possibly be offended by me talking about fake fights, because we live in a very politically correct world climate these days. As we count down to number 6, can't remember who number 6 is. I think, is it the Barbarian? I think it's the Barbarian. Let's see. No, I'm absolutely wrong. It's Shawn Michaels' WrestleMania 8 opponent, funnily enough. Tito Santana, El Matador, Tito Santana. He appeared at the first 8 WrestleManias. He defeated the Executioner at WrestleMania 1. He teamed up with the Junkyard Dog at WrestleMania 2, taking on Terry Funk and Hoss Funk. He was part of the free-man tag match, teaming up with the British Bulldogs. That team consisted of Davey Boy Smith and the Dynamite Kid. And they took on the Hart Foundation and Dangerous Danny Davis. Tito Santana would then team up with Rick Martel of Strike Force in a losing effort against my favorite tag team ever, Demolition. He would once again team up with Rick Martel at WrestleMania 5 to take on the Brainbusters. That was that infamous match where Rick Martel walked out on him. And then, so, I mentioned the Barbarian. That was Tito Santana's WrestleMania 6 opponent. And he was defeated by the Barbarian. The Barbarian just about took his head off Tito Santana with that damn flying clothesline he gave him. He didn't win many matches at WrestleMania. At WrestleMania 7, I think he went up against the Mountie. I can't remember. I haven't got Wikipedia here to remind me. But I'm pretty sure he had a match with the Mountie. Then WrestleMania 8 that was Shawn Michaels. Here's the Barbarian. He's in now, or coming down the ramp. And then I believe he would have a dark match. What is a dark match, you may wonder? A dark match is when it's non-televised. And I believe he had one with Papa Shango at WrestleMania 9. I've always thought Papa Shango, who doesn't feature in this match at all, but I felt like they missed the boat with that guy, that character. I always preferred Papa Shango to the Godfather. I was never a big Godfather fan. If I was it was over. I will say the Godfather character was extremely over. As the Barbarian and Ric Flair double team the British Bulldog. I just felt like Papa Shango lost too many times. Bret Hart had him in the sharpshooter one time, and that killed his gimmick. That was it. That was the beginning of the end, or the end for Papa Shango when Bret Hart beat him clean with a sharpshooter. And I love Bret the Hitman Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart's actually not featured on this show at all. He was had the man flu or something. And he was replaced by Rowdy Roddy Piper, whom we'll see later on. But I've watched a few shoot interviews with Bret the Hitman Hart, and he talks about how the plans were in 1993 for him to get a sharpshooter victory over not just the Ultimate Warrior at the Royal Rumble the year later, but also a sharpshooter victory over Hulk Hogan, and just I'm glad that didn't happen. As much as I love Bret Hart, I don't think that's the right boot, especially the Warrior. The Warrior never gives up. Are you joking? He'd have got out that. Now, speaking of Warrior, here's the guy I thought perhaps was the Warrior when I was 4 and watching this the first time. Out comes the Texas Tornado, whom died young. We'll hear about wrestlers dying young all the time. Kerry Von Erich. He passed away way too young in 1993 as he battles Ric Flair here, whom is he's definitely the MVP of this Royal Rumble, Ric Flair, and he's in there with future greats like Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker appears in this match there, Jake the Snake Roberts, and he proves himself here as one of the greatest professional wrestlers, entertainers ever. So right now in the ring, we've got Ric Flair kicking the head of the Texas Tornado. Tio Santana's battling the Barbarian, and Shawn Michaels is being hoisted up by the British Bulldog. You know, for 28 years of my life, I had short, basic haircut. Apart from that one time I was ginger. And when I was a kid, as I said earlier, I wanted to look like Shawn Michaels. I wanted to be Shawn Michaels. And I started growing my hair following Trump's election victory, not to mention politics at all in this video. And I'm going for the 1994 Shawn Michaels long-haired look when it was really long. That's what I'm going for. And not sure. There's a Demolition Smash as the Repo Man. Now, when I was younger, I had no idea this was Smash. I mean, but it wasn't much. I mean, he no longer wore face paint. He did wear a mask. He had cut his hair short, but I think if you were an adult watching this at the time, you'd definitely know that Smash. And Demolition, later on, they turned into a trio. They went from a duo to a trio and included Crush. And Crush would be repackaged as well this year, and he would go up against the Repo Man at SummerSlam 1992. If you enjoy wrestling, if you like my take on wrestling, if you've enjoyed this video, I don't think anybody will watch this all the way through, but maybe someone will, some poor guy will. Let me know if you would like to see me talk about life while watching another wrestling match on mute. And let me know what wrestling match you'd like me to talk about, to react to, if I ever do this again. This Life with Wrestling. Wrestling with Life, I think I'll call this video. Create a new playlist. If you're a fan of the PMDB video series that was established in 2010, you can find my videos on all three of my YouTube channels. PMDB videos, Paul Michael DB, what you're watching now, and PMDB free as we count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I've lost count which entrant it is. Doesn't matter. It's Greg the Hammer Valentine. Doesn't matter. Now, you know what I will say. Greg the Hammer Valentine, his hair, this was what? 27 years, over nearly 28 years ago actually, because the Royal Rumble happens every January. And Greg the Hammer Valentine has not aged much at all. His hair looks exactly the same. His hair was looking fantastic in a shoot interview he did with Hannibal, a guy called Hannibal on YouTube. He's a wrestler. He also does YouTube videos talking about wrestling, and he's got a number of great shoot interviews on there. He did a great one with Jake the Snake Roberts. Jake the Snake Roberts, who will be featured in this matchup soon. Jake will forever be in my top 10 wrestlers lists. He was my number one wrestler of the golden age of wrestling in my top 10 video talking about them. And I seen a clip of The Undertaker's podcast interview with Stone Cold Steve Austin. I was on the WWE Network lately. And he mentioned how Jake the Snake Roberts was, he gave him credit for some of the direction the Undertaker character went at the very start of his career rather. Shawn Michaels is almost eliminated. Texas Tornado, he's hanging on by his feet. I remember one year, Marginet, as we count down for another participant, was hanging on with his feet in the 1989 Royal Rumble. Looked rather ridiculous, but fun. Ridiculous, but fun as a legend from WWE, Here Comes the Pain, comes out. Can you guess who it is? Nikolai Volkov. He was featured in the very first wrestling match I ever watched. I got into wrestling when, just in time for the steroid scandal in 1991. It was just before this pay-per-view, actually. I got into it November time, just before the 1992 Royal Rumble in January. And Nikolai Volkov featured. Well, what happened was, I was at my friend Ross's birthday, and he got an old school Silver Vision Survivor Series VHS, and we watched it, and that's what got me hooked into wrestling. It was the 1988 Survivor Series. I've always had a soft spot for that show. And the first match on that VHS was this gigantic Survivor Series tag team elimination match. And the Bolsheviks were involved in that match. As Nikolai Volkov goes out, what a shame. I hadn't even finished talking about the guy he's been eliminated by, the Repo Man, it looks like, whom also featured in that first, or was it, I think maybe Tio Santana. Oh, it doesn't matter. But Nikolai Volkov is already out before I could even finish talking about it. How rude. So, still in the match right now is Greg the Hammer Valentine. He's wailing away at Ric Flair. We've got Repo Man creeping about. As the clock goes for the countdown again, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Is it the Big Boss Man? Yes, it is the Big Boss Man! He appeared in my top 10 Golden Age era video as he goes for Greg Valentine. He's going for everybody. The Big Boss Man, criminally underrated performer. He was always very entertaining, I felt. And Greg Valentine, he's got eliminated by the Repo Man. He's out. Bye-bye, Greg. We'll see you again in the 1994 Royal Rumble. Big Boss Man's going at it with Shawn Michaels. Both of those performers would then later on feature in the Attitude Era, another boom period of the World Wrestling Federation specifically. A Repo Man's gone. Bye-bye, Smash. He's out of there. Repo Man was a fun character, but he was definitely more successful as Smash, part of the greatest tag team ever. I always, I think it's a crime they're not in the Hall of Fame Demolition, especially Bill Eddy. Bill Eddy, who was Demolition Axe and the Masked Superstar before then, he's got such a great mind for wrestling. And they're both sound guys too. I've watched a number of shoot interviews with them, and they're both really sound. Bulldog's gone, he's out. The ring's going to clear out soon as we get ready for a showdown with Tornado's gone by Flair. Yeah, Roddy Piper's coming out soon. And there's going to be a showdown between him and Flair. It's quite hilarious what happens to the Big Boss Man during this little clear out before we go to the next chapter of this Royal Rumble. Shawn Michaels is out. Tio Santana's gone. As the next participant comes out, Hercules, poor Hercules, he's not going to last long in this Royal Rumble. I remember watching stiff kick from the Barbarian to the Big Boss Man. I remember watching a match with Hercules and Psycho Sid Justice from 1992. And by then, Hercules was just a job guy, and he really didn't give a shit about it either. He took a powerbomb from Sid, and, Sid got the pin, but Hercules was back on his feet right after the powerbomb, and the camera angle had to change because it was that obvious that the powerbomb is not that great of a move. He exposed the wrestling. We've got Hercules battling the Big Boss Man here as he goes over to the Barbarian, eliminates the Barbarian. He was trying. Hercules is out. I told you it doesn't last long now. This showdown between Ric Flair and the Big Boss Man is very entertaining. A little poking eye to the Big Boss Man as Flair fires him into the ropes. Boss Man dodges a clothesline of his own. And then Boss Man, hilarious swinging kick there. And so he launches towards Flair. Flair dives out the way. Boss Man gets caught on the ropes and really injures his head at the bottom, the blue rope. It looks brutal. It reminds me of the time when China threw out Mr. McMahon in that corporate Raw Royal Rumble, and he got his head caught up on the bottom rope. Austin broke character during it because he was laughing so much you could tell. As Roddy Piper bursts out here. I've been privileged to see Roddy Piper in person and Flair. I of course was at WrestleMania 25. Have I mentioned that before? One of the worst WrestleManias that did feature one of the best matches ever, Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, as Ric Flair is being bounced about in the ring. Big knee, flying knee from Piper as they commenced the battle outside. I remember, I was very young watching this first time around. I remember some of the older kids were talking about this Royal Rumble and saying, they should have stayed in the ring throughout the entire Royal Rumble. It's kind of cheating when you go outside, even though it's underneath the ropes. I remember them saying, well, Flair was actually out, because he actually was out of the ring. But the Royal Rumble rules are you have to be thrown out over the top rope and both feet have to touch the floor in order to be eliminated. Ric Flair and Roddy Piper were best of friends. They did have a great chemistry. They also battled in Ric Flair's first Survivor Series as Roddy Piper is spinning Flair around that airplane spin. At Ric Flair's first Survivor Series, it was Team Flair versus Team Piper in a really shit match, to be honest. Had a BS finish with a number of the participants getting disqualified. That was a really rubbish Survivor Series elimination match. But I will say the best part of that match was when Piper and Flair went at it. Their chemistry was great as the countdown is on. 3, 2, 1 to the greatest wrestler of the golden age of wrestling, Jake the Snake Roberts. Trust me. He was a heel at this point. Now here's a guy that performs really well as a face and heel. One of the rare guys that can do both right. What a fantastic he should have been in the Hall of Fame years ago. He eventually got in 2014. I remember him talking about it in an interview where he at first was annoyed he was going in the same year as the Olmec Warrior, but the two of them chatted. It must have been at the event, and they had heat with each other. They had some bad blood, but the Warrior and Jake, buried the hatchet, which was nice to hear as he gives a short arm clothesline. I love when he does that to Ric Flair. He's going for the DDT. I think he attempts to give Ric Flair a DDT here. It's a wrestling move. And then he's about to get a clothesline from Roddy Piper. I love Jake Roberts' pants he's got here, his tights. Always liked that attire. This is just in the middle of his hot feud with the Macho Man Randy Savage. In the previous November, there was that infamous moment I think it was WWF Challenge taping or Superstars of Wrestling taping where they had a real Cobra bite Savage. For years, the snake of choice, Damien, as we count down to the next wrestler, it was usually a python Roberts brought to the ring. As Hacksaw Jim Duggan pops out, yep, it's Hacksaw. Ho! The winner of the 1988 Royal Rumble. He's on his way. 2x4. I had all these wrestlers. Wrestling, still got them, wrestling figures. The figure of Jake the Snake Roberts, his head actually came off, but I managed to fix it. I must admit, I was never a big fan of Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I appreciate him more now, but I remember I had this VHS tape, and it featured him wrestling some Japanese wrestler I wasn't familiar with at the time, and I was so happy when he was defeated. Even as a kid, I was like so chuffed. I didn't appreciate Hacksaw Jim. I appreciate him way more now. In fact, he's in one of the most hilarious backstage battles ever produced by the World Wrestling Federation when him and Harley Race, God bless Harley Race, passed away this year. When him and Harley Race had a battle backstage at the 37th Slammy Awards from 1987, the whole show overall was mental in a good way. But it featured a backstage hardcore before its time brawl with Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Harley Race involving everything and chickens, and Harley Race takes a sick bump on his head. He gets thrown into a pole and he goes down with this big pole and his head just bounces off it. There's a table. It was way ahead of its time. This is way before the Attitude Era, ECW. So teeing off, we've got Piper and Roberts going at it, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan is wailing away like Ric Flair. As who's next? It's IRS. It's Mr. Taxman, the evil Taxman. Irwin R. Seister, the dad of the Fiend, Bray Wyatt. His dad is at the 1992 Royal Rumble. Irwin R. Seister. I loved Irwin R. Seister, IRS. I thought he made a great tag team with the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. They would both go on to form Money Incorporated, Money Inc. I loved the whole $1 Million corporation as well, and I loved the fact he wore a damn tie to the ring. That's just asking for trouble. And Hacksaw Jim Duggan grabs it right away and is wailing away on Irwin R. Seister. Mike Rotundo. It was like night and day between his Mike Rotundo, wrestler at WrestleMania when, I think that's his real name, yeah. He wasn't very good with the backstage interview, but when he became IRS, I really felt he really nailed that character and was rather good. Underrated performer, actually. He was a good character, good heel character, the evil taxman. And I love how he wore a tie to the ring. Back then, a lot of the wrestlers, or most of them rather, had a gimmick. And they were larger than life. That's the problem with today's wrestling. A lot of the stars today, I don't care how many fancy flippity flip-flop moves you can do. There's no character there, or there's no story behind the fake fight. The majority of people are not going to be interested in it. They're not going to be impressed by a over-choreographed fake fight. You've got to have some character. That's the countdown clock. And it's Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Now, I'm not going to mention anything out of wrestling, but I will say I was never a fan of his character either. If I'm being honest, I thought he was one of the worst wrestlers of the Golden Age. I didn't get it. I guess his peak was before my time. When he really was in his peak and he was jumping off the cage to splash Don Morocco. All that stuff happened before I was born. But any old tapes I used to watch as a kid, or he would return, I didn't buy into him. Obviously, controversial behind the scenes too, but I'm not going to go into that. It's not the place. What's sad about these old wrestling videos now is a lot of the roster are no longer here. A lot of wrestlers from the golden age of wrestling have passed away. Some of the biggest names: Warrior, Savage, Big Boss Man, all gone. So you feel like sometimes you're watching a damn black and white film, especially WrestleMania 6. That's like a ghost town. WrestleMania 6, that main event with Warrior and Hogan, that was definitely my gem of my childhood. I loved watching that match. Those two were my favorites when I got into wrestling, and still in my top 10 today. As the next participant, oh wow, speaking of greats, led by Paul Bear in the urn, it's The Undertaker. I believe he was 26 or 27 here. Wow, what more? I could just spend the rest of this commentary, this Wrestling with Life video, talking about The Undertaker. I was privileged enough. Did I mention I've been to WrestleMania 25? Was that a WrestleMania? The only WrestleMania I've been to. And I was privileged to see, as he goes right for Superfly Jimmy Snuka, his WrestleMania 7 opponent, out Snuka goes. His WrestleMania 8 opponents in the ring, Jake the Snake Roberts, as he starts to choke out Ric Flair. Ric Flair and The Undertaker, of course, had a classic matchup at WrestleMania 18. If The Rock and the Hulk Hogan matchup never took place in WrestleMania 18, that match would have been the one that was talked about years later, because it really was such a great. I love WrestleMania 18 for the most part. It's just ruined by the main event. The main event's terrible. It's placed wrong. It's a very slow and boring match between Chris Jericho and Triple H, who had no business headlining WrestleMania that year. But let's not. Oh, Jake Roberts nearly out here by Piper. Let's not mention Triple H. See, I like watching it in 1992 because there's no Triple H in WWF in 1992. It's blissful. He was not even a thought in Stephanie's head here. I love it. Who's next? Oh, it's the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Oh, yeah, and he's going right for Jake the Snake Roberts. He's sprinting to the ring like the Warrior would. Jake Roberts is gone, though. He's snuck out as the Taxman, evil Taxman, the Undertaker, are going for Savage. Well, Macho Man Randy Savage, one of the all-time best. He would be that type of wrestler that would make a top 10 in any era. And he was on fire in the golden age of wrestling. Him and his relationship with Miss Elizabeth, as he dodges a short arm clothesline and is battling back against Jake the Snake Roberts in this Royal Rumble. He's going for the elbow, but Jake Roberts is up. Catches him with a double axe handle. Big knee, Roberts is out. And then Savage awkwardly eliminates himself, which was a mistake because technically that would have been him out. He jumped over the top ropes. The Undertaker's went out to correct the mistake. And I think the commentators make up some BS that you have to be thrown out by a wrestler. You can't eliminate yourself. You've actually got to throw out be thrown out to be eliminated. But I was quite the see. I don't think much would have changed if Savage just went out there, eliminated himself. I don't think it would have affected the match because he's in the final four, but he doesn't really get much to do later on. There's no big showdown that he would have missed. So actually, I think him eliminating himself would have been better for him because he doesn't have any more big time moments in this match. Later on in the match is all about Hogan and Sid and Flair getting the victory. It's not really about Savage, even though he's in the final four. So, I mean, that was a mistake, him jumping out over the top ropes. But I think he would have actually been better if he just left there. He got Jake Roberts out. He accomplished his mission to get Jake Roberts out of the Royal Rumble. He should have just, went out there too. But yeah, I was mentioning earlier how I was privileged to see The Undertaker at WrestleMania when the streak was still intact, and perhaps his greatest WrestleMania match ever. In fact, it was his greatest WrestleMania match ever with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. One of the worst WrestleManias, but it had a hidden gem in it. That was that match. And I've talked about that enough, to be honest. I always feel the need to mention it whenever I talk about wrestling. Just to give people an idea of how much of a wrestling mark I was. Even at 21, I was still... Here comes the Berserker! I've got an action figure of him as well. He's led to the ring by Mr. Fuji, who managed that should-be Hall of Fame team, Demolition, and would later manage future WWF champion Yokozuna. There's a lot of... In the golden age of wrestling, there's a lot of great managers. Bobby the Brain Heenan, who could do it all, really. He was a great manager too, as well as a great commentator. As the Berserker is hoisted up here by the Hacksaw Jim Duggan. In the ring at the moment is Savage, Duggan, the Berserker, The Undertaker, Ric Flair, and somebody I can't see. Well, it's Piper. As Irwin R. Seister and Ric Flair are double teaming the Macho Man Randy Savage. See, I sometimes watch these guys on YouTube. We watched a movie, and I seen them doing commentary for Jason Goes to Hell, and I thought, and I've seen others do these type of videos where they just put a picture and they just, put the audio over a picture. And I think they do it the same reason I'm going to do it. To save time. This would be a disaster. I'd be here until next Christmas if I were to do this as an actual video. Like, trust me. We've got a comedy spot here. We've got The Undertaker's got a stranglehold on Ric Flair and Piper. Yeah, me. Undertaker was such... Zombie Taker here was such gold. As Virgil! Oh, poor Virgil. He's entering the greatest Royal Rumble ever. He is kind of a superstar in his own right these days, Virgil. He's you could call him a meme superstar in the wrestling business. There's that infamous photo where you got Virgil at a signing booth table. On the background, you try not to laugh, but it is funny. On the background, you've got wrestling superstar Virgil, and he's there at the desk, and there's no one at the booth wanting his autograph. And that picture became a meme in the wrestling world. He would feature in a number of Royal Rumbles over the years, Virgil. He used to be the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase's bodyguard. He would also feature in another great Royal Rumble match, the 1994 Royal Rumble, which was commentated by the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and he was so great during that Royal Rumble. I thought they should have kept him commentating more events, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase. And when Virgil came out, it was during the time Kevin Nash Diesel was cleaning house and eliminating people left to right to center. I'm speaking shite. I really need a cup of tea. But the $1 Million Man was like loving it when Virgil came out because he knew he wouldn't last long against the dominant Kevin Nash, aka Diesel. As the next participant comes out, and it is the Iron Sheik, or I think he was known as Colonel Mustafa at this point. The Iron Sheik, known more these days for his OTT shoot interviews. He was the guy that got pinned by Hulk Hogan at Madison Square Garden in 1984 when Hulk Hogan became WWF champion for the first time, and Hulkamania came alive there. Now, a lot has been said about Hogan over the years, but without doubt, I mean, he features in this match later. Without doubt, Hulk Hogan, the biggest star in wrestling history. Still love the Hulkster. You know, sometimes, there's a lot of things like Austin's did in the past in his personal life that I wasn't too happy with, and I forgave him, and I forgave the Hulkster. But without Hulk Hogan, I don't think wrestling would have been mainstream. Not at the level it was. He really was like the Mickey Mouse of professional wrestling for a while. And I'm a big Steve Austin mark. I've mentioned Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I'd end up mentioning Stone Cold Steve Austin, who is nowhere near this Royal Rumble. I'm a huge Stone Cold Steve Austin mark, but if I've got to be honest, as much Austin 316 t-shirts were sold, I do believe Hogan was the biggest star in wrestling ever. As out comes Rick the Model Martel, and I don't think Rick the Model Martel has been inducted into the Hall of Fame yet, which is another crime. He should definitely be in the Hall of Fame. Used to be part of the team Strike Force, which I mentioned earlier. Loved his pink tights as well. He really stood out with his pink tights. Rick the Model Martel would then go on to battle Tatanka at WrestleMania 8. Loved his music too. Very underrated. See, if Rick the Model Martel were in any other era, he would have been a much bigger deal. But because he was in an era where he was surrounded by so many great characters, he kind of got overshadowed as the Iron Sheik goes out. But in any other era, he would have really been a top guy. He would also go on to battle Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 1992. This transitional year, 1992, is one I could go back to and probably watch every show because the commentating team of Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan were excellent throughout. And despite it being a transitional year, I mean, it was a solid Royal Rumble match. I enjoyed the pay-per-view as a whole too. You know, the greatest Royal Rumble match ever, which I'm watching on mute. As the countdown clock goes on, I think it's the Hulkster next. I think it's the Hulkster. What you gonna do, brother? It's Hulk Hogan! I believe he was... See, I How can you not love this? Look at how happy that crowd looks. The energy he brings to the match instantly here. He still got on his t-shirt as he battles Erwin R. Seister and The Undertaker. I love this little double elimination here. He's being double teamed by the Berserker and The Undertaker right now. And he gets a great elimination. Now he's being triple teamed by IRS, The Undertaker, and the Berserker. The Undertaker and Hulk Hogan battled twice before the Royal Rumble. Once at Survivor Series, once at, I was going to say Taboo Tuesday. No, it was Tuesday in Texas as The Undertaker gets a big clothesline. Out he goes, lands on his feet. He's not happy with that. Then the second quick elimination is off the Berserker. Out he goes. Oh, crowd goes wild as Hogan rips his t-shirt off. Oh me, those were the days. Now he definitely was less popular, but the crowd still popped for him huge at this show. As the Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Virgil eliminate each other. As Piper is stalking Hogan now. He's about to attack Hogan there, but Erwin R. Seister came from behind with Hogan's t-shirt and started attacking Piper with it. As the countdown clock is on. Hogan always got a great number, didn't he? But I believe the reason why Hogan had here's Skinner. Skinner really looks like a YouTuber have watched over the years, a smaller YouTuber. Really reminds me of him. Skinner the Alligator Man. I'm not sure what happened to Skinner. If anybody knows what happened to Skinner, let me know. He had a very quick matchup with the late great Owen Hart at WrestleMania 8. But I can't recall many more Skinner moments, I'm afraid. In the ring right now is Piper, Skinner, the Hulkster, Ric Flair. Now here's two, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan. There's always that debate, who was the better wrestler. They would both make my top 10. It is tough. It is tough. I mean, the biggest star was Hulk Hogan. But perhaps I'm going to go with Flair as the better in-ring worker, entertainer. Both were. I'm going to have to go with Flair again as promos goes, but it's so tough to pick. I think my heart says Hogan. My heart says Hogan. I don't think I would have been a wrestling fan for so long if it weren't for Hulk Hogan. So I'm going to go with Hulk Hogan if I had to choose one. They, of course, both were involved in that Saudi Arabia show Crown Jewel. It was Team Hogan versus Team Flair. It just shows you the state wrestling's in. They still have to rely on old stars to sell shows overseas. As Sergeant Slaughter comes in, Hulk Hogan's WrestleMania 7 opponent. I'm not the biggest fan of Sergeant Slaughter. I thought his main event with Hogan, that was a mistake, Slaughter and Hogan. As Skinner's out, eliminated by Rick the Model Martel. That was a mistake, WrestleMania 7, being headlined by Sergeant Slaughter and Hulk Hogan. That, after the gigantic main event, Hogan and Warrior from the previous year, I don't think, WrestleMania 7 needed a better main event, I think. He almost seems a nice guy in the interviews too, Sergeant Slaughter, but I'd be lying to say if I were a big fan. I'm not sure if I'll commentate more Royal Rumbles. I mean, this is a really good one. If you are going to watch a Royal Rumble on mute, then it's this one. There's lots to discuss. Lots of great wrestlers in this matchup. We've got 3 of the 4, I had to start again. As the next participant comes in, it's Sid Justice. It seems I can only record for an hour or so, then it goes out, so I apologise for that. But hasn't been much action missed. Nobody else came in. Sid's just in. Another guy that should be in the Hall of Fame. I just thought he was so intense in his interviews. He looks like a guy that would kick your ass, Sid. And he was always super over during the brief time spells he had in the World Wrestling Federation. And he pulls a great mean face too. Of course, Sid would go on to headline WrestleMania 8 and WrestleMania 13. Out of the 2 WrestleManias he participated in, he headlined both. I mean, technically he was at WrestleMania 11 too, as Shawn Michaels' bodyguard. But you can say at the WrestleManias he wrestled at, he main evented both, as he's laughing his head off now at Ric Flair. Sid, like I say, he's had these moments behind the scenes. It's a lot of funny, scary stories about Sid. But he always looked the part. And I think he did enough for his character too. Like, he didn't need to be doing flippity flip-flop moves or having 5-star matches. He just needed to be a beast, and he was. And he was scary as a kid, Sid. As the countdown clock goes on, and it's Harvey Whippleman, can never pronounce his damn name, with the Warlord, and this is the 30th entry. I think that they deliberately did that pause to get people excited that the Ultimate Warrior was going to burst out there. Even back in 1992, before the internet, WWF were such trolls, just like they trolled the audience in the 2017 Royal Rumble when number 30 was Roman Reigns. And that was the last person a lot of the wrestling marks and me wanted to see at number 30. As Ric Flair takes a suplex from Hulkster on the outside. It's getting down to the nitty-gritty. No more participants will enter this Royal Rumble. We have Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter just took a bump into the ring post. He's eliminated. Hogan's WrestleMania 8 opponent eliminates Hogan's WrestleMania 7 opponent. It's all ties together. As Hogan and Flair battle. Big boot. I'm switching this audio off right away. As soon as Ric Flair wins this, that'll be enough of me flapping my gums. Sid's got angry face now. As Roddy Piper, he looks knackered. Ric Flair, it just goes to show what great fitness Ric Flair has. He's been in this match for an hour or so, and he's not lying in a corner. As Erwin Arceister, he's getting pulled out by his tie here. He's out. Great pop for him going out. How do I know it's a great pop? Because I can see the fans reacting. They're not chanting, "You, this is awesome," or "You deserve it." None of that BS in 1992. That's another thing about today's wrestling. I think even the fans are not as good as they once were. Warlord just got eliminated by the team of Sid and Hulk. Now we've got Hogan and Flair, Piper, Sid, Rick the Model Martel, and the Macho Man Randy Savage, whom of course has already been eliminated, but it didn't count or Yeah. So I know for next time as Rick the Mole Martel is shoved out and Piper by Sid. Now it's the final four. It's the WrestleMania double main event in the ring here. Is that WrestleMania 8? It would be Sid and Hulk battling it out. And for the WWF Championship, it would be Savage and Flair. As Flair hits Sid with a big knee, Savage was trying to eliminate Savage at the time. He got a bit of a help there from Flair. So Savage is out. Hulk and Ric Flair are chopping each other. It's almost the end here, folks. You would definitely think Hogan's winning. Like this, I think this was a genuine shock when Hulk gets eliminated, and there is a big pop. There is a big pop when he goes out. And Monsoon is just raging in commentary. Sid and Hulk were chums too at the time. But Sid's made a mistake now because, well, Hogan is now pulling his arm as Ric Flair is getting back to his feet and Sid goes out. And the winner of the 1992 Royal Rumble, the greatest Royal Rumble ever, is Ric Flair. And I'm done for this wee video, but I hope you enjoyed this. I might do more of these if this works, if people enjoy it. If you've watched all the way to the end, God bless you. God bless you. Woo!